Hi there, I'm Jasco, and today we're doing power chords. If you've been following the videos on this playlist, so far what we've done are open chords, meaning that they're chords containing open strings and they're down at this area of the neck and they don't move around, they stay down there. C, G, D, A, E. I think we did E minor, A minor, maybe B7, maybe F. So F is a chord that's actually has no open strings, and you could take and move that around to get different chords. But today we're going to do power chords, which are a very common chord that you hear in rock guitar playing. They're a two-note chord, so instead of strumming 6 strings or 4 strings, we're only going to strum 2, so we have to be a little more precise with our picking hand. And power chords are movable chords. We're going to be able to move them up and down the neck. A basic power chord shape is first finger on the low E string, and then pinky or third finger, your choice, on the A string on the 5th fret. So we've got 3rd fret and 5th fret. Those two notes. Those two notes are the 1st and 5th notes out of a scale. If I was to play a scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First note, 5th note. So sometimes you'll hear the term fifths, and that's just the interval that's a power chord. I can take that, and as long as my fingers stay the same in relation to each other, I can slide that up or down, and it's still a power chord. Now, what power chord it is depends on what the lowest note is. In this case, that note, 3rd fret on the low E string, is a G, so there's a G power chord, or a G5 chord. If I move it up to the 5th fret, so I'm at 5th fret and 7th fret, that low note is an A, so there's an A power chord. If I move it up to the 6th fret, that low note's a B flat, so there's a B flat power chord. So you can see that this will probably make you want to learn or need to learn the names of the notes on your low E string. The other thing about power chords is you can not only move them up or down on 2 strings, but you can move them across the neck. So if I'm playing 3rd fret on the low E and 5th fret on the A, I can take that and move the whole thing physically down 1 set of strings. So I'm 1 string higher now, 3rd fret on the A string, 5th fret on the D string, and I'm only picking those 2 strings. I could move it over another set of strings, so I'm 3rd fret on the D string and 5th fret on the G. If I move it over one more set of strings, I have to alter the shape slightly, because I'm tuning 5th fret on all my strings, but 4th fret from the G to B, so the shapes are all different if you're crossing the G to B string. So now if I'm 3rd fret on the G, if I want a power chord, I would have to be 6th fret on the B string. If I move it over one more set of strings, it goes back to the same shape it was, 3rd fret and 5th fret. Now most of the time, people aren't going to be playing power chords up high like that on those strings, but you could. There's no reason you can't. So a couple things to do to practice power chords is to practice moving them up and down on the same strings. You can also practice switching strings. I'm going to move from the low E and A to the A and D. Maybe I even go a string higher and go to the D and G strings. So the reason that these are used in rock guitar a lot is when you add distortion to chords, if they're not very simple chords like a first and a fifth, then a lot of times the distortion makes the chords sound muddy or kind of sound bad. So maybe I'm playing some jazzy chords with a clean sound like this. So that sounds pretty cool when I've got a clean tone on the guitar, but now I'm going to hit a distortion pedal. And those chords have gotten a lot more muddy sounding because they've got so many different notes in them. But a power chord only has two notes, and they're two notes that work really well together. The first and the fifth note out of a scale. So do you hear how a power chord still can retain its kind of clarity with distortion on versus some other chords? Now we're going to practice a couple exercises that'll sound kind of like songs that'll help us get down these power chords and learn some of the techniques that we need to actually play them in songs. So in addition to just playing a power chord, sometimes you'll hear people slide power chords. So I'm going to pick a G power chord, 3rd fret on the low E, 5th fret on the A string. Then I'm going to slide it up 2 frets without picking. And hopefully if both my fingers stay down, then both of those notes will sound when it gets 2 frets higher. I'll do the same thing in reverse now. I'll pick at the 5th and 7th frets and slide it down from an A power chord to a G. So we can do a drill kind of like this. So I'm playing a G power chord, 3rd fret on the low E string, 5th fret on the A string. I'm going to pick it, just those 2 strings, then slide up. So when I slid up, I didn't pick again. I just got to make sure my fingers stay pressed down hard enough so that the chord still rings out. After I slide up, I'm going to mute with both hands. I'm muting with my picking hand, touching it lightly to the edge of my hand, lightly to the strings, and I'm also picking my fingers up slightly off this power chord. So my fingers aren't leaving the strings, they're still touching the strings, but the strings are leaving the frets. So I've got 2 mutes just to make sure that bit of silence is in there. Then I'll pick the A power chord, then I'll pick it again and slide down to G. Then I'll do a mute and then repeat the whole process. So really slowly. And that kind of sounds like, what's that Van Halen song, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? I don't know if he's playing it in that key or not, but it's the same type of riff. Let's do one more power chord exercise. It'll sound like this. What I'm doing with this is I'm going to play a power chord on the 7th fret of the A string and the 9th fret of the D string. That's an E power chord because my lowest note, 7th fret of the A string, is an E. I'm going to play that power chord, and then after it I'm going to play the low E string 2 times, and I'm going to mute it slightly with the edge of my hand touching the low E string right in front of the bridge saddle. So I get kind of a more chunk sound than just, if I didn't use any muting, it would sound like this. But if I play the power chord without muting and then the low E string with muting, I I get that kind of contrast between the open strings and the muted strings. So I'll do that 4 times for the riff. Power chord, 2 muted E strings. Then I'm going to move down and play a D power chord. That's 5th fret on the A string and 7th fret on the D string. Then I'll cross strings to the low E string and the A string. I'll stay at the same frets. So 5th fret on the low E string, 7th fret on the A string, and play that. That's an A. So slowly, 2, 3, 4. And then a little faster. Here are a few other things to note about power chords. If we go back to our G power chord, 3rd fret of the low E string and 5th fret of the A string, say I start to lower that down. So then I'm at 2nd fret of the low E and 4th fret of the A string. That's F sharp or G flat. Then I lower it one more. Now I'm at F, 1st fret of the low E string and 3rd fret of the A string. Now if I lower it one more, then I've got open low E. I went 1st fret down to open, and I've got 2nd fret on the A string, which I can now play with my 1st finger or any finger that I want. So there's an open power chord. That'll be an E power chord because the lowest note is E. If I want to play an open A power chord, I can play open A string and 2nd fret D string. Open D power chord will be open D and 2nd fret G string. So I've got open power chords in those positions, or any higher positions, I won't have any open strings at all. I can also play a power chord with 3 notes. So if we go back to this G power chord, there's G, there's the note D, it's the 5th note in the scale, as we talked about. Well, if I take another G and put that on top of it, so I've got G, D, and then G again, that's still just a 2-note chord, but I'm using 3 strings to play it. I've got G as the lowest note and the highest note. So sometimes that can be a little bit bigger sounding power chord. I could play that barring with my 3rd finger for both of those notes that are on the 5th fret, or with my pinky. It's a little bit harder to move around because I'm moving 3 notes instead of just 2 notes. If I've got to play faster, I might choose the 2-note version. If I'm playing slow, big power chords that I want to ring out, maybe I'll choose the 3-note version. Then another little offshoot of that is, let's take this 3-note version. What if I don't play the lowest note and I just play 5th fret on the 5th fret on the A string and 5th fret on the D string? Now I've got a power chord that's kind of inverted. This is a 4th instead of a 5th if I'm counting from the lowest note. 2, 3, 4. But it's really still a G power chord. You've just got the root on the top instead. So it's a little bit different sound, but still kind of the same function. Maybe I've got a bass player playing a G an octave lower, and I just want to play that to add some space between the bass and the chord, or just to give it a slightly different sound. The famous song "Smoke on the Water" uses those kind of inverted power chords, or intervals of a 4th. So if you're looking at those inverted power chords, remember the root note is the highest note, and regular power chords, which are a fifth, root note is the lowest note. Here are some close-ups of my fingers for power chords. There's the basic power chord shape. I'm using index finger and pinky. You could use index finger and ring finger. Once you get that power chord shape, you can take it and slide it to whatever frets you want. You just have to make sure that shape stays the same. If you contract it or expand it, it won't be a power chord anymore. You can cross strings. Remember, on the G and B strings, you've got to make it 1 fret longer. The open power chord shapes. The 3-note power chord shape. It's really still only 2 notes. It's G and D, but we've got G an octave higher. So I've got G, D, and then G again. I could bar that. I can also take just that top part, those 2 notes, and it's the inverted power chord. So have fun with those power chords. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll try to get to them. And hope to see you on the next video. Thanks a lot. Remember, like, subscribe, share, and hit the little bell next to the subscribe button so you know when I'm posting new videos. Thanks a lot.